Hey, nature photographers, I'm back for another week, and I have what I think is going to be an interesting, both philosophical, technical, and very important. Hey, nature photographers, it's Lee. I'm back for another week, and I have today for you what I believe is a philosophical, technical, and critically important way of changing your thinking on what it means to take a picture. And I think that if you can begin to shift, think of it as a paradigm shift in how we look at photography. I so often, we have to separate some of the things we thought about when we shot film and slide. Now, some of you may never have, and you're only in the digital world, and this is still going to apply to you. So sit back. I promise you, I think this is going to be a discussion that you probably haven't had on any other YouTube channel, and you probably haven't thought about your camera this way ever before. All right, so here's what I want you to think of. Whenever you go to press the shutter button on your camera, I don't want you to think so much about taking a picture or capturing an image. I want you to think about the fact that in your hand is a computer and you are going to capture a data file. All right, I want you to let that sink in. You're not taking a picture, you are capturing a data file that will become a picture or an image. And there are some very important reasons why we need to make this shift in our thinking, okay? Because too often when we're thinking about taking a picture or an image, we would do, I don't know, some of y'all may not have shot slide film or digitals, but man, I remember going to the camera store or the drugstore, wherever you dropped it off, and you grab it and you just start looking at it, right? It's instant viewing once you finally get it back. And too often, people want to take a picture, look at the back of the camera, and they want to have that same final feeling. But nothing could be further from reality, especially if you're shooting in RAW. Primarily if you're shooting in RAW. If you're shooting in JPEG, you're probably not watching this. If you're shooting in JPEG, there are so many reasons to shoot in RAW. I can't. That's not the point of this video, but you've got to think about collecting a data file. And the thing about a data file is the more data, the more you have to work with in your file. Okay? So it is very important that you start wondering, what does it mean to really capture a data file in my camera? Well, this is what it means. If you think of your sensor, right, it's made up of all these pixels, roughly 21 million roughly on our sensors. Various numbers, right? We're not going to worry about those kind of details. But think of every pixel on your sensor as a well, right? I'm trying to make it the best I can with my accent. Not a well that jumps in the ocean, but a well that we get our water out of or you throw coins in, right? So think of every pixel as a well. But we aren't pouring water, thankfully. We're not pouring water on our sensor. We're not pouring coins in. We're pouring light. Think about this. The more light that you pour into every pixel, the higher the signal to noise ratio. Now that's a little technical, I know. But the more information we give our camera, the less it's trying to fill in the gaps or make up crap. Okay, I'm going to jump, and I'll do videos later in more depth on noise, but there's two types of noise. Luminance, which is just that kind of random splotchy pattern you see more often at high ISOs in dark areas, or you'll see it a lot if you underexpose an image and try to brighten it. And then there's chrominance noise, which is a result of our sensors heating up, and you see these random colors. Like if you do night sky photography and you're taking a lot of images, you might see a red or a green or a blue or a yellow pixel where it should be black or dark, right? That's chrominance. So the biggest issue we generally have is luminance. And that comes from a variety of reasons, and that's not my topic, right? But the more light you're going to pour into that pixel, the more information you're giving your camera to work with. Regardless of your exposure, regardless of your ISO, regardless of your subject, regardless of the light, forget all of that. I'm talking about the light going into your sensor. The more you put into it, the more information it has. This does not mean I'm talking about overexposing your image. I'm talking about exposing to the right. What that concept is, and I'm going to do another video at another time on exposing to the right, because it is one of the most important aspects for photography. You will hear photographers poo-poo that. They might be full framers and they love to talk about how to fix images or save them, or I don't talk about that. I talk about how to nail an image, okay? So to nail an image, we want to collect as much data as possible because it's a data file that's going to become an image. So again, pouring that light into every pixel as much as possible. Now here's my saying. We want to do that without blowing out the highlights unless the scene or the subject warrants it. Let me say that again. We're going to pour as much light into every pixel without blowing out the highlights unless the subject or the scene requires it. For example, some people love to shoot birds at the top of trees against a bright sky. If you're going to properly expose that bird, most of the time you have to blow out the sky. So in that case, you would blow out the highlights in the sky to properly expose the bird. Here's a hint. Yes, there's high key shots which can be really pretty, but you need to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. But if you're constantly blowing highlights in the backgrounds of your images, you're probably taking a lot of really crappy shots. Okay? Now for landscape photography, I love to shoot into the sun. Depending on the clouds, the sky, the dust in the sky, so many other factors, I have to make a decision on how much of the sky am I going to blow out to get detail in the foreground. Now with live graduated neutral density filter in the OM1 Mark II, that means I'm going to blow out even less sky to get more detail in the foreground. All right? So again, let's go back to our concept here, the philosophical and technical way of thinking about taking a picture. When we press the shutter button, we're letting light hit the sensor. And we're using shutter speed, aperture, and ISO to control that. Those are completely different discussions. As that light hits the sensor, the worst thing to do, especially with micro four thirds cameras, is underexpose an image. Now you'll hear so many people, well, we can do this and that. Again, exposing to the right is a great idea regardless of the camera you shoot. Okay? You're capturing more data for your data file, plain and simple, which means we have more information to work with in post-processing. And I often hear a properly exposed image on the back of my camera. Most clients look and say, that looks overexposed. And I ask them, well, what are you basing that off? I don't know, it just looks. Well, they're not looking at the histogram, they're not looking at the highlight alerts. Remember this concept. In digital photography, the worst thing to do is underexpose an image because as you brighten it, you create luminance, noise. Okay? If you reduce an image, you don't create noise. You can always reduce your exposure a little bit to make it more pleasing to the eye. So again, when I'm looking at the back of my camera, I'm not looking at the final image. I am looking at the data that I have collected to create the final image. Now, if you nail it, if you do really well in camera, you minimize how much post-processing you do. And I enjoy post-processing. You know, some people absolutely hate it. Well, if you're going to hate post-processing, photography, digital photography, is probably not a good hobby for you. I realize it can be challenging to learn. There's a lot of concepts you want to work with that you need to know. There's little tips and tricks, and we'll do videos on that. But hear me out. Don't worry about making the image look on the back of your camera the way you want it to when it's finally done. Now, we need a sharp image. It should be sharp regardless. Right? We want a well-composed image. We want to work to move away from cropping post-capture as much as possible. Of course, you're going to have to at times, but we want to minimize that because you're just throwing away data. That's what you do. You throw away data when you crop. The only reason a lot of people love to brag about big sensors is because they don't have good field craft and they don't know how to get close to subjects, or they have shorter lenses because they don't want to spend 22 grand to get the same focal length that we get with OM system cameras, okay? So, hear me out. We're collecting data that will then become an image, All right. Now we can look at the back of the camera. We're going to look at our highlight alerts and histogram. There'll be way more videos to come on this whole concept. I want you to really begin to think about how much data am I capturing in my image, not how does it look on the back of my camera. You will almost never see me chimping in the field because A, I don't want to miss opportunities, and B, you really can't really assess much on a little tiny screen. We all have had images we thought we nailed it, are great. You pull them up on a 27-inch monitor and you go, oh, it's not as sharp as it looked on the back of the camera, right? So let me encourage you. This is a new way of thinking about your photography. It's a new way of looking at the files, which of course are converted JPEGs on the back of your camera. It's a new way of looking at it. It's a new way of thinking. It will help you in terms of getting better images over time. The more you nail that exposure, it doesn't mean it's how it's going to be in its final stage. By nailing the exposure, I mean exposing to the right as far as possible without blowing out the highlights unless the subject or the scene warrants it. Okay? Unless the subject or the scene warrants it. That's critical. And you will begin to learn how to assess your exposure, not for does it look the way I want it to look on the back of my camera. Now, there are some light conditions and situations that are so spectacular that exposing the right and everything, you look at it and that's how it's going to be. Okay? But there are some times I'm going to pull my exposure back down, either globally, okay, that means over the whole image, or locally on certain elements of it. But, today I posted an image of a bald eagle on Instagram and Facebook. You've got bright white head, a bright white tail on an overcast day, and a dark body. I want to capture as much data on that dark body. Here, let me throw up that image. Okay? Here's the image I posted that day. Look at the detail on the dark body of that eagle, but notice you can also see detail on the head, that bright white head, and the bright tail. That's because I did not blow out the highlights on the tail and the head. I exposed as far to the right as possible, and I captured all that detail in that dark body. But for my final image, I pulled exposure back down just a little bit on certain elements. I pulled it down a little bit on the head, the tail, to bring back even more of the detail, okay? But if you overexpose whites, I'll talk about that another day. That's another video. That's an entire video of what happens when you try to recover blown highlights and whites. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We aren't going to think, wow, that's it, I'm done on the back of our camera. We're going to begin to think about the fact that we are collecting data. We want to collect as much data as possible to minimize luminance noise, to make post-processing easier and better, because we can always reduce an exposure and not create noise. Okay? Micro Four Thirds will produce images every bit as good as any other camera system, any other full frame system out there, no problem. I had one of our YouTube community send me a message that his friends had told him you can't print a Micro Four Thirds image larger than 11 by 14. And my first response is, your friends are morons. They may not be able to. They're regurgitating the same stupid crap they hear from other YouTubers that don't know anything about Micro Four Thirds. They may not be able to. I assure you I have an ISO 12800 print. Could probably print it at 4 feet. In fact, I should do that and then come back and share the results of that. So, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's radically transformed the way you're going to look at your photography. And again, it's not something you have to always be doing. It's something that you want to do to ultimately make your images richer, better contrast, better details, sharper. All of those kind of things are going to come together to help your nature photography get better every time you go out in the field. And ultimately, that's why I'm here. I want you to come back and tell me, you know what, Lee, I've been taking these tips, I've been taking these techniques, I've been changing the way I think about photography, and every time I go out in the field, it's getting better. Then my channel is kicking ass. You guys have a great one. Go out there and get some great shots.